Hello everyone, Lytro Storm here, and today I am making another brand new What If series. This one is going to be similar in premise to a recent series on the channel, but instead of Chi-Chi, what if Tenshinhan was a Saiyan? I did a poll on my Discord server asking who should be made into a Saiyan next, and he won. So if you guys want to be part of polls for the channel going forward, be sure to join using the link in the description. But anyway, with this story, I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do to set it up, so let's not draw it out any longer and just get straight into the video. So Tenshinhan is stated to have descended from an alien race of three-eyed people by the Daizenshu. So if I make him a Saiyan, that kind of gets rid of one of the most iconic things that make him stand out. So what I'm going to be doing is saying that all of the human DNA is replaced with Saiyan DNA, while the Triclops part of him stays intact. But wouldn't this make him a hybrid with crazy potential? Well, it's kinda weird. It's assumed he isn't a perfect split of human and Triclops given the statement that he descended from the three-eyed people. So without a perfect split, he's not gonna have potential like Gohan or Goten, or any other Saiyan hybrid. Instead, we're gonna tone his potential down and say that it's just the same as in canon, which doesn't do him a disservice considering he was actually told to be a prodigy in his early days in the story. Plus, doing it this way makes for a much better story because he doesn't have insane potential that early on, so he won't be body slamming all the villains and stuff. So now that we've established these ground rules, we need to give him a backstory to explain why he is a Saiyan. Now this may seem a bit forced, but I have to make the premise of the story happen, so don't try to read into it too much. We're gonna say that a Saiyan squad would at some point attack the planet that the three-eyed people were on. It's likely that they existed on Earth, but for the sake of the story, we're gonna say no to that. So the Saiyans invade and kill almost the entire race, leaving only one left. There are also only two Saiyans alive after this conquest, due to that troop being pretty weak. One of those Saiyans proceeds to beat down on the last survivor of her people, even after she has begged for mercy. But this doesn't really sit well with the other Saiyan, who barely had a part in the battle to begin with. Consider this guy somewhat of a Guinea-like character. We're also just gonna call him Joe for simplicity. So Joe tries to stop his Saiyan comrade, but he refuses and ends up picking a fight. So now Joe is losing the fight, but the Triclops woman saves his life by finishing his teammate off. So now the two have both saved each other, so Joe takes her back to his planet to get them both healed. They do so, and Joe would protect the woman from anyone who tried to attack her. The two would eventually fall in love and have a child, who would go on to have a child with another Saiyan. And this process will repeat for however many generations you think Tenshinhan is from his ancestors. It really doesn't matter too much. What matters is that Planet Vegeta would be under threat, and Tenshinhan's mother would decide to send him off to Earth. She took some inspiration from Guinea and Bardock doing the same to their child. However, Tenshinhan is a few years older than Kakarot, like he is in canon. He later arrives on Earth, hitting his head and losing his memories. Thankfully, he is found by the Crane School and would go on to be trained by Shen alongside Chaozu. I know that explanation took a while, but we had to do a lot of explaining to explain his heritage to keep it intact. But now we can get into the actual changes in the story. So one night, Tenshinhan would look at the full moon and become an Uzaru. Now thankfully this was early on in his training, so his strength would be manageable. He would be subdued by Master Shen and would be forced to stay indoors by a certain time. Now we are going to take the time and pull a little bit from the anime since his training really isn't too detailed in the original source material. So in the anime, it is shown that Shen's brother mercenary Tao showed up from time to time and basically just beat up Tenshinhan. So because he is a Saiyan here, he is going to get some Zenkais from this. Granted, Zenkais really weren't too much before Z, but they did still exist. Other than that, I don't think too much would change for his training. So by the time of the 22nd Budokai, instead of a 180 power level, he has one of 200. Like I said, it's not a huge difference, but it does allow him to win his fights with Jackie Chun and Goku much easier. Goku also notes that he has a tail like him, so that's pretty cool as well. But really, not too much else changes, Krillin still dies, and Goku chases Tambourine down. Most of this is going to remain the same, with Roshi and Chaozu also dying. So now Tenshinhan is going to spend some time learning the Mafaba before approaching King Piccolo. This time though, when Drum is spawned, he is not going to have such an advantage over him. Instead, Tenshinhan will fight evenly with him and actually have an edge due to his superior skill. So when he hits him with the Dodon Ray, it would do some good damage. This then allows for him to finish Drum off now that he is wounded. However, Tenshinhan will likely be drained from such a close fight. Luckily, Goku now arrives and fights King Piccolo, who would still crush Tenshinhan during their fight. So afterward, he would feel kind of angry at his embarrassment and would want to recover quickly so he can train sooner. So he goes with Goku to Korin's tower in order to get a Senzu Bean and would then get a Zenkai from his beatings with King Piccolo and Drum. He then goes off and does the same training as in canon once the others are brought back to life. But by the time of the tournament, since Tenshinhan is much stronger, he and Chaozu would already be around their Raditz Saga selves. This is really good, as this is a whole 5 years prior to that, meaning that they're going to be far stronger going forward. And so Tenshinhan is going to have an easier time beating Tao than in canon. He would then go on to clash with Goku about evenly until he takes his weights off. At that point, he is embarrassed and defeated, just like he was in canon. The rest of the tournament then also plays out the same. After it's over though, I would see Tenshinhan actually being with Launch this time. I mean, his Saiyan instincts would probably tell him to be with her since he would like strong women. So he ends up going off with her along with Chaozu and they live a nice life together. Though he would never stop training even after their child was born. The child would be mostly Saiyan and human, with the Triclops DNA being a lot smaller. We'll say that the kid is a girl named Yu Shang. Since her father and Chaozu's names are both based on Chinese food, I thought this name would be pretty fitting. Yu Shang is based on a Chinese food of similar name, but we'll say that she is called Yu for short. She still retains her third eye and would have some pretty crazy potential. I mean, think about it. She's mostly human and Saiyan, so she's close to an even split like Gohan is. And she's going to be raised in a really good home setting. That might not sound like it's too important, but Tenshinhan was stated by Akira Toriyama to have some godlike potential that was locked away since he trained with the Crane School. But if this kid was pure-hearted and was trained from Tenshinhan right from the start, she would have that potential and the potential of being a Saiyan human hybrid. So if anything, she would have more potential than even Gohan does. But Tenshinhan wouldn't begin her proper training just yet. Instead, he would teach her essentials in attitude and behavior, as those things were very important to his training. So anyway, Tenshinhan and Chaozu over the 5 years of training will be stronger than in canon. He decides to bring Yu Shang to Kame House to introduce her and reunite with everyone as well. Gohan and Yu Shang would meet, and they would get along pretty nicely. Eventually, Raditz arrives and notices that Tenshinhan is also a Saiyan, and both he and Kakarot have their own children. He explains to his brother everything in the original story, but would still be rejected on his offer. And so Raditz one-shots Krillin into the house and then one-shots Goku to the ground. Tenshinhan tries to attack, but would be one-shotted as well. So now Raditz was free to take both Yu Shang and Gohan. While Gohan spends his time crying, Yu Shang would be trying to free herself, but that's obviously not going to work. Back on Kame House, Piccolo approaches and agrees to team up with Goku and Tenshinhan. The three head off together and try to fight Raditz head on, but that's not going to work. Tenshinhan's power level was only about 300, so he's not going to be much help realistically. And so the three all get beaten down, but Tenshinhan especially takes the heaviest beating. Inside Raditz's pod, Gohan and Yu Shang are both watching what happens, and Yu Shang sees her father being beaten down. This is gonna make her angry, and then she sneezes. Her hair then turns blonde, and she jumps out of the pod with a massive power level. She seems to be born with a different spin on Launch's oddity. When she's really angry, she sneezes, and her hair turns blonde like her mother. Her power level also skyrockets like Gohan's does when in this alternate state. Raditz reads a power level over 1,000 from her, and would then be headbutted to the chest. This does some pretty heavy damage to the Saiyan, and of course Yu Shang would then be batted away, with Piccolo proposing his plan to use the special beam cannon. Both Tenshinhan and Goku proceed to stall Raditz while Piccolo charges up the move, and this does lead to Goku being beaten down, and Gohan making his headbutt move on Raditz as well. He is now heavily wounded, and so Piccolo fires the blast, killing him right there. I don't think Raditz would be able to recover in time from 2 identical attacks like that, and that's not even to mention that Goku probably would still end up pulling his tail too, so he'd be weakened. So this means that Raditz dies, but Goku lives. Raditz barely makes out a sentence, cursing himself for not killing a single one of them. Piccolo just responds that even if he had, they would just use the Dragon Balls to wish the person he killed back. That information is then relayed to Vegeta and Nappa, so they will begin heading to Earth and arrive in about a year. So now our gang is going to have to begin training intensely. Piccolo, seeing Goku and Tenshinhan both there, wouldn't try to take their kids to train them. but he will say that they should do so themselves. And so, after recovering via Senzu Beans, the two now gather up the Z-Fighters for training on Kami's lookout. Goku wants to train Gohan though, so he decides to get him trained by Master Roshi. Of course, Chi-Chi wouldn't like this idea, but would come around to it, so long as it doesn't get in the way of Gohan's schoolwork. Kami informs Goku that his training with him likely won't do much good for him, since he's already passed his training previously. Goku agrees, and so he heads down to train with Piccolo. At the same time, Tenshinhan trusts his daughter to be trained by Roshi and supervised by Launch. He then begins his own training with the Z-Fighters on Kami's lookout, as Goku flies to Piccolo's location. Goku informs him that the best way for them to get stronger is by training together, but Piccolo refuses. Luckily, Goku tells him that this means that they can fight over and over again the entire year, and this gets Piccolo interested enough to agree. So let's go ahead and skip to the end of everyone's training. We'll start off by telling you guys the Z-Fighters' power levels afterward. Starting with the weakest, Gohan is about a 600 after training with Roshi, while Yu Sheng is about an 800. This is because she also went along to climb Korin's tower and train with him, but Gohan wasn't able to due to Chi-Chi. The Z-Fighters are all slightly stronger, and Tenshinhan stands at the top with a 2200 power level. Meanwhile, Piccolo is at 5200, and Goku is at 5800. So while some of our fighters are weaker, most of everyone else is at least a little bit stronger. When Vegeta arrives along with Nappa, they plant the Cybermen, but with Goku being here, I don't see him letting Yamcha die when he gets cocky, so he's gonna survive. Nappa then steps up to fight Piccolo, while Vegeta goes to fight Goku. Now while Piccolo is going to be beating Nappa up, Vegeta is going to be doing the same to Goku. Nappa does also begin adapting over time to Piccolo, but the other Z-Fighters jump in and team up. This overwhelms him, so he gets beaten down, leading to Vegeta offing the brute himself. Afterward, he then continues his brutal beatdown of Goku and forces everyone else to help him out. Unfortunately, despite Yamcha being alive, he's going to be the first victim of Vegeta's spree. Chaozu will be next, which infuriates both Tenshinhan and Yu Sheng. Yu Sheng's attack isn't going to really do much, but Tenshinhan's Tri-Beam will be the strongest attack so far. It actually forces Vegeta to increase his power quickly, allowing for him to take a lot less damage. Tenshinhan then collapses, but Goku brought the two Senzu Beans from in cannon. He gives one to Tenshinhan, healing him up and giving him a Zenkai. The rest of the Z-Fighters continue battling, but Piccolo is killed as well. Goku gets injured pretty badly, so he takes the remaining Senzu Bean and receives a Zenkai himself. At that point, Goku is brought up to a power level of about 8000 and continues his match with the Prince. At a certain point, Goku does a Kamehameha to clash with Vegeta's Gallic Gun. But thankfully for Goku, everyone else backs him up with their own blasts as well. Everyone except for Tenshinhan. And so as Vegeta is starting to win the clash, Tenshinhan pulls out a bottle and uses the Mafaba. This lands on Vegeta and he manages to control it enough to seal him away. Tenshinhan then falls to the ground and goes unconscious, but he's still alive. By the way, the reason he had the bottle ready is because he thought he should have had it against Raditz and wanted to be 100% sure that they won. It was a very risky battle, especially with his daughter on the line. The gang all makes recoveries in the hospital, and because no one is aware of the increased gravity, they all go to Namek in Kami's ship. We've got Goku, Tenshinhan, Krillin, Gohan, and Yu Sheng all doing image training on the way to Namek, which is gonna make them all quite a bit stronger. They arrive and see Frieza along with Zarbon, Dodoria, and Kui, who is here because he doesn't have to deal with Vegeta. Goku wants to save the Namekians who are being attacked, and so the gang charges in. Their early arrival allows for them to save both Dende and Muri this time. Gohan and Yu Sheng both off-guard Dodoria and Kui, while Tenshinhan and Krillin use the solar flare to help everybody escape. Muri also destroys their scouters before being flown away. So now the group hides in a cave and thinks of a plan. They decide to split up and leave Dende and Muri with Bulma. So the groups are Goku and Gohan, and Tenshinhan, Krillin, and Yu Sheng. The latter group finds Guru's house and all gets their potentials unlocked. I'll go over their power levels later. But anyway, Goku and Gohan are found by Kui, and Goku is forced to battle with him. When this happens, Goku tells Gohan to find the others, and that he will handle this. And so the two clash, but Kui is going to be winning by a good bit. Thankfully, Goku has the advantage of skill and technique, so he is able to use a solar flare to blind him. He then blasts Kui with a Kamehameha wave, incapacitating him before flying off and catching up to Gohan. The two then find the rest of the gang and grab Dende and Mori before going to Guru's house to get their potentials unlocked as well. After that, Dodoria, Zarbon, and a recovered Kui find them, and so now R5 proceed to fight Frieza's elites. Gohan's power level here is 7,500 since he wasn't as strong as he was during the Saiyan saga, and didn't get a Zenkai either. Yu Shang is 12,500, almost as strong as Krillin was originally. Speaking of Krillin, he's at 18,000, making him on par with Kui. Tenshinhan's power level is 37,500, and Goku's is 70,000. So while Krillin, Yu Shang, and Gohan beat up Kui by working together, Goku and Tenshinhan are on their own against Dodoria and Zarbon. But thankfully, they easily take them down. So once all three are defeated, the Ginyu pods land. At this point, Tenshinhan knocks the wounded warriors unconscious, deciding to deal with them later. Ginyu takes the Dragon Balls and brings them to Frieza, ordering his squad to bring back the wounded when they're done. So now Goku and Tenshinhan take on Jason Birder, while Krillin fights Recoome, and Gohan and Yu Shang fight Goldo. But these fights are not going to go too well for anyone minus Goku. Thankfully, Goku recognizes his friends are in danger and makes quick work of Jace. He then saves Krillin by one-shotting Recoome, so Krillin goes to help Tenshinhan. Goku now tries to help the kids, but Goldo's head explodes before he can get there. He wonders what was going on before seeing Mori standing there with his fingers pointed. Goku thanked him, but the Namekian responded that it was the least he could do. Eventually, Ginyu made his way back and began fighting Goku. Unfortunately, Goku is not quite as strong as in canon, so the captain is not going to want his body at all. Ginyu will beat Goku up pretty easily, but Goku is slowly catching up in power due to Guru's unlock. Tenshinhan also helps out where he can, providing additional support to his comrade. And so Ginyu eventually decides to do a beam clash using a Milky Cannon, but Goku uses a Super Kamehameha, which is stronger and allows him to blow the captain away. Now seeing that he was a bit injured, our three-eyed Saiyan would fire some Dodon rays at him, dealing even further damage. This leaves Ginyu on the ground and severely weakened, and so now he decides to take Goku's body, seeing how this one is unfit for combat. He does the body change, and now Gohan and Yu Shang step up to fight him. They manage to fare quite nicely against him, even in Goku's body, but do end up getting beaten and saved by Krillin. He proceeds to slam Ginyu, forcing him to try and take Tenshinhan's body. But Goku jumps in the way, and so he's returned to his own body, and so the Saiyan quickly reacts, turning Ginyu into a frog. Now the gang stumbles on what to do, but they eventually decide to use Frieza's ship. They must have some sort of healing equipment there, which is better than nothing. Plus, that's where Ginyu took the Dragon Balls, so now they can make the wishes if they go there. Mori tells Dende to go with them as he has some business to attend to. They all head off and put Goku into a healing tank. Meanwhile, Frieza is now battling against Nail and Mori. The two Namekians are both determined not to let him come near the Grand Elder, and Mori had gotten much stronger due to Guru's unlock. Plus, he had to get payback for what Frieza did to his village. The two don't prove to be much of a match for the Emperor, but are able to stall him for a good while. Back to the gang, they are summoning the dragon and making their wishes, except for Tenshinhan, who is inside the ship, questioning Kui, Dodoria, Zarbon, Jace, and Recoome. Tenshinhan wants to try to get intel, so he asks them about things related to Frieza, but they all refuse to give answers. He's about to start hurting them, but Jace asks if he has any pride as a warrior. He's just gonna beat them up while they're down. Tenshinhan, being someone who has heavy pride as a warrior, would decide to compromise. He tells Jace that if one of them can beat him, he'll let them all go. Recoome steps up and throws multiple punches at the three-eyed warrior, but none of them have any effect at all. Tenshinhan had gotten a lot stronger than he was before. He then says, "That's what I thought," before killing Recoome in one hit. At that point, they all decide to spill everything that they have, saying that Frieza had other forms and that he blew up planet Vegeta. They also mention the Great Ape form, since they noticed Tenshinhan had a tail. So now that Tenshinhan has learned what he needed to know, he knocks the remaining four out and puts them into healing tanks. That way they can't mess with Goku when they wake up. Back outside, the gang uses their wishes to resurrect Piccolo and bring him to Namek. Now Piccolo is previously almost 50% more than his original power level, which means that he's going to make it across Snake Way much faster. And that means he's going to be able to train much faster too, so he's going to have more time, allowing for him to get an even bigger boost than in canon. This makes him about double what he was originally, putting him at a 2.5 million power level when he fuses with Nail. Unfortunately, Muri was already dead at this point since he was much weaker than Nail and couldn't take hits as well. So, he's only going to be able to fuse with Nail and not Muri. With this, he quickly flies in to fight Frieza. Even when weighted, he far exceeds Frieza's current strength, allowing for him to give a swift beatdown. So he jumps to his third form, and Piccolo proceeds to fight him again. He is going to be winning this fight even with his weights on, and this forces the Emperor to use his final form. At this point, Tenshinhan and the others would have healed their wounds from fighting Frieza before. Tenshinhan was the only one severely injured though, so he got a Zenkai. Also, Frieza's final form is now beating Piccolo up effortlessly, so Piccolo decides to use what he learned from King Kai, the Kaioken. Goku never learned it here, so him picking the move up himself just makes sense. This allows him to use somewhere around a ×20 since he's at a 2.5 million power level in base. With that, he can keep up with Frieza even when he's at 40% power. So of course Frieza steps it up and ends up defeating him in the end. So now Tenshinhan goes in with a power level above 1 million. This isn't really much, but it does help Piccolo out a bit. Especially when he uses the 4 Witches technique, allowing for him to get some more shots in. But when they both get beaten down, Yu Shang becomes enraged and sneezes, making her hair turn blonde before attacking. Being angry makes her much stronger, and so now she is capable of catching Frieza with her punch. After that though, Frieza dodges, but the time allows for Piccolo to be healed by Dende. Gohan himself gets furious when Yu Shang is beginning to lose, and so he basically takes over for her, leading to them both being badly hurt. Now that Piccolo is healed though, he and Krillin go to stall Frieza, letting Yu Shang and Gohan be healed as well. Frieza quickly catches on to what's happening, and attempts to kill Dende. However, Tenshinhan knows that he can't let this happen. He charges up a Tri-Beam and fires it at the Emperor just after he shot his Death Beam. So while Tenshinhan managed to blow Frieza away, he also took a deadly attack while using a technique that is very risky. And not to mention he was already injured before that. So I think with all of these things at once, he would collapse, telling Dende not to worry about him and just to save the kids. And so both Gohan and Yu Shang are healed just before Frieza returns and kills Dende as well. Yu Shang gets enraged once more after seeing her father die and prepares to charge at Frieza, but is stopped. Son Goku stands in front of her. And his power level is 10 million rather than 3 million. So he is going to be ready to fight the Emperor. He proceeds to do so, leading to the two both clashing, and he's able to press Frieza to use more power than he had before. But with no Kaioken or Spirit Bomb, this fight is not going to be going in Goku's favor. Instead, Frieza just gets down to a comfortable level and beats the Saiyan down with minimal effort. Thankfully, Goku does still have certain skills and techniques to try to even the odds, but it won't prove useful enough to help him win the fight. Thankfully, Piccolo knew this, and so he asked for Krillin, Gohan, and Yu Shang's energy. They gave it to him, and he begins charging a really strong special beam cannon. Once it's ready, he unleashes the blast, and it blows a hole through an off-guard Frieza. It's nothing he can't recover from, but it does hurt quite a bit. Frieza realizes that he can't let him get away with this, and so he proceeds to blast a hole in Piccolo and blow Krillin up. This enrages Goku, causing him to go Super Saiyan, and with a 50 times increase, that puts him at a power level of 500 million. He tells the kids to get Piccolo out of there, and proceeds to slam Frieza without any real competition. Even the Emperor's full power won't be nearly enough, so he also manages to stop Frieza from destroying the planet. By then, Shenron would have long used the Dragon Balls to bring the good people on Namek back to life, including Tenshinhan, but Krillin won't come back because he already died before that. Tenshinhan, having been revived, flies into Frieza's ship and frees Jace, Zarbon, Kui, and Dodoria from their healing tanks and tells them to leave the planet. He then gets out of the ship, heading towards his daughter as he flies off. Meanwhile, Frieza has just been beaten to a pulp, and Goku does still give him a little bit of energy. But instead of using it to blast Goku, he uses this to power a blast that destroys Namek's core. Goku sees this at the last moment though, and unleashes a blast of his own. While it does kill the Emperor, Namek is still set to blow up soon. And so Porunga's final wish is used to teleport everyone to Earth, and Goku has no reason to stay at this point since Frieza is already dead. And now, with everyone safe and sound, they wait out the time and bring everyone else back. Afterward, the Nameks go to their new planet Namek, and that all goes pretty nicely. As for Jace, Zarbon, Dodoria, and Kui, well, I've got an interesting note to leave you on. They go to speak to King Cold about what happened on Namek, telling him that everyone died, including Frieza. But they do know where the people who did it came from. They had listened in on Vegeta's time on Earth. That's how Frieza knew about the Dragon Balls in the first place. So now they know exactly where to make their attack. King Cold tells them to prepare themselves, as they're going to head there as soon as possible. However, a Frieza soldier would then point out that a frog came out of their ship, and it's writing something on the ground. Change now? All of a sudden, a purple beam expanded from the frog and hit the soldier, making him switch bodies. The soldier then did a pose and announced the return of Captain Ginyu. He requests the king to hold off on his plans as he needs some time to get prepared. He can't avenge his fallen comrades or emperor with a body like this. He needs to train himself up. Cold allows for this so long as the rest of the force was doing the same training. The captain agrees and says that Kui, Zarbon, and Dodoria are now part of the Neo Ginyu force. Back on Earth, a few days or so after they returned from Namek, Tenshinhan returns to Kami's lookout. He enters the room where the bottle containing Vegeta lies. He contemplates whether to set him free or not. I mean, any of the Z-Fighters could easily kill him if he tried anything, and Tenshinhan wanted to know if he held any sort of knowledge about their race. Perhaps over time, Vegeta could even reform, but Vegeta did kill Chaozu, Yamcha, and Piccolo. Maybe he deserves to be trapped forever. With much hesitation, Tenshinhan opens the bottle and lets his former foe out of the prison. Vegeta has been in there for quite some time, so he is pretty angry. He threatens Tenshinhan, but he cannot act on his threats at all. Vegeta tries attacking, but our stoic hero takes the hits like they're nothing. He is hoping that Vegeta would realize how outmatched he is and decide to give up. Of course, that won't happen at first, and instead Vegeta just tries to blow up Earth, but he is stopped with a punch to the gut, leaving him on the ground. Tenshinhan explains what he did to him, and that they went to Namek. They defeated Frieza, well, Goku did. Vegeta is in shock, and says that that must mean Kakarot is the Super Saiyan. Responds that he did undergo some sort of transformation, so now I guess they have the name for it. At this point, Tenshinhan tells Vegeta that they can get a lot stronger through training. Of course, this idea was barely known to Vegeta, as he believed in strength at birth, and hearing that Kakarot was the Super Saiyan and defeated Frieza eases him into training. And so, over the next year and a half, Tenshinhan does his best to train the prince and also get him integrated into society with the help of Bulma. Of course, Vegeta still plans on killing everyone one day, but he's in check for now. In space, King Cold has decided that Ginyu and his men have had enough time to train. It is time to go to Earth and claim their revenge. Ginyu in his new body has managed to reach about half of his original strength, so a power level of 60,000. Meanwhile, Kui, Dodoria, Zarbon, and Jace have reached the 200 to 400,000 range. It shouldn't be very surprising, as they all have had a year and a half to train intensely with each other. I think the average soldier Cold brought with him originally would be anywhere from 10 to 15,000 as well, since they were training too. Anyway, Cold decides to set off to Earth, and they eventually arrive the same time he did in canon. Sensing an energy similar to Frieza's, as well as some other familiar energies, the Z-Fighters all decide to check the area out. King Cold then steps out of his ship, and announces that he is here to take revenge on the ones who killed his son. The Neo Ginyu Force then step outside, followed by all of the normal grunts. Tenshinhan realizes that he shouldn't have let them go before, and prepares himself to take them out for real this time. Ginyu even makes his presence known in a new body, which shocks the gang. Anyway, Cold sends his men out to kill all the Z-Fighters, while he faces off against Goku. Gohan, Yamcha, and Krillin all proceed to beat down on the random goons, while Tenshinhan, Chaozu, Vegeta, Yusheng, and Piccolo fight the Neo Ginyu Force. Of course, they are just going to win pretty easily with no difficulty whatsoever. Ginyu attempts to steal someone's body, but Tenshinhan fires a Dodon Ray to stop that from happening. At that point, the rest of the squad is at their mercy, and both Vegeta and Tenshinhan want justice, so they proceed to kill all of them. Tenshinhan had already given them a chance before by letting them all go despite what they had done, but they just came back and tried to kill them again. So, if they're not going to stop, they just need to end them themselves. Meanwhile, Goku has already gone Super Saiyan and completely washed King Cold before he could do much at all. Cold offers him to become his son, but Goku is obviously going to refuse that and just finish him off. And no, Goku wouldn't spare him because of his arc of sparing villains is already over. We know future Goku killed King Cold in the original story, so it shouldn't be a surprise that he kills him here. With that wrapped up, our gang returns to their normal lives a few years later. Goku dies from the heart virus, and following that, the androids arrive. Now I'm just gonna brush by all this really quickly because I don't see too much really changing. Maybe Tenshinhan sacrifices himself against the androids to save Chaozu, Yusheng, and Gohan in the initial battle. Chaozu will just die in a later fight though, and Yusheng might survive long enough to train Trunks, but with the two androids seeing two Super Saiyans, I doubt they'd let both of them live. So Yusheng would just die at some point, and then Gohan dies after that, like he did in canon. And I don't see the two getting together because of some later stuff that I'm going to bring up. All that's going to change here is that Trunks will be a bit stronger from having two mentors. Also, Trunks would still be born, due to Vegeta still hooking up with Bulma at some point. So yeah, he's still here. He might be somewhat younger because Vegeta is newer to Earth, so he would have even less of a connection to Bulma, but there's really not that much difference. Anyway, Trunks eventually goes to the past and kills King Cold himself. After that, he explains the android threat and gives Goku the medicine for the heart virus. He then spars with Goku before dipping, and so at that point, the gang all realize that they need to train intensely. Goku, Piccolo, and Gohan will train together like in the show. Yamcha and Krillin still train on their own, but Tenshinhan, Chaozu, Vegeta, and Yusheng will train with each other. This is going to give everyone involved a massive increase. The reason Vegeta's training with the gang is because Tenshinhan wants to keep an eye on him, and also he knows that Tenshinhan is very strong, so he's gonna, just get as strong as he can with him. One night within the first month of their training, Tenshinhan would talk to his wife, Launch. He tells her that he knows they'd prefer only one kid, but if they lose to the androids, like they did in the future, it would be better to have a strong next generation to come after them. Launch agrees, and so the two end up having another baby. But after 9 months, it actually ends up being twins. They would be born about 9 to 10 months into the 3-year time skip. But the funny thing is that they're both girls. So now Tenshinhan and Launch have had 3 kids, all of them being female. I thought making him have twins was cool because then he has 3 children just like his 3 eyes. I know it's pretty basic, but I mean, I like it. One of the girls, the older one, would be named Chow Mein, while the other is named Brunch. That way Launch's name still has some input, since it was literally just lunch. The full 3 years would eventually pass, and the gang all meet up. Tenshinhan tells them that Vegeta said he'd be back at some point, so that's why he's not here. Also, Chaozu is able to show up this time since he's much stronger. Goku and Tenshinhan eventually fight against androids 19 and 20 in 2 one-on-one fights. And you know what that means? Tenshinhan unlocked Super Saiyan during his training. So while Goku is struggling, Tenshinhan will dismantle Android 20 with little difficulty. Because Goku is a lot stronger though, I think he will still kill 19 before being taken back home by Yamcha. Android 20 then uses that distraction to get out of there and releases 17 and 18 and also dies to them. 16 is then also released by the other 2 androids, and now Vegeta and future Trunks also show up. Not together though. Vegeta goes Super Saiyan, but since he's much weaker than in canon since he hasn't been around as long, 18 is going to demolish him without any trouble. This makes Trunks fly in sooner to attack, but he also gets trashed by 18, and eventually the rest of the Z Fighters all try to defend him, but things go a bit different this time. Tenshinhan at this point, when using Super Saiyan, would be equal to Android 16. So that means that he'd be able to beat up 17 and 18 even when they're working together. And I know that sounds like a big jump, but remember that he's been intensely training this entire time with multiple training partners. And that's not to mention all his boosts beforehand, which already made him really strong. So now, with the others backing him up, the demise of the 2 androids would happen very soon. Thankfully for them, Android 16 also steps in because he doesn't want his friends to die, beating Tenshinhan due to him being tired out from fighting the androids before. They then escape, and our gang decides what to do from there. Piccolo does his fusion with Kami, and goes and fights Cell, and the time chamber is brought up by Goku. I really don't think that everybody would be down with Vegeta going first this time, since he's, a much newer threat, and is very, you can't really assume what he's gonna do. So Tenshinhan decides to go in with Trunks instead. The 2 will actually train together, not like Vegeta and Trunks did originally. Outside, Piccolo still has his match with Android 17, but not just 17. Remember that Piccolo is far more powerful in this story, so he's going to wipe the floor with both 17 and 18 at once. Once again, 16 must step in to help his friends, and with all 3 of them at once, Piccolo does finally start having some trouble. But he uses the Kaioken to keep up and keep them at his own pace. He eventually does start to get worn down though, and that's when Cell makes his return. He quickly absorbs 17 and beats Android 16 up as well. At that point, Goku uses Super Saiyan and tries to stop him, with Chaozu also trying to use telekinesis, but neither of these work. So Goku and Chaozu both end up getting beaten down. These two things then lead to Yu Shang and Gohan going Super Saiyan and trying their best to stall, but it just doesn't do very much here. They all get knocked aside as well. So with no distraction from Tenshinhan and his Neo Tri-Beam, Cell is gonna find and absorb 18 just as Tenshinhan and Trunks arrive. So now he's in his perfect form and is down to fight either of them. Tenshinhan reveals Super Saiyan Grade 2 and attempts to fight Cell this way. He's able to hold his own much better than Vegeta did originally, but Cell is really loving how strong he is. When Tenshinhan attempts to use a Neo Tri-Beam, Cell quickly stops him, realizing how strong that attack was. He blasts him to the ground and proceeds to beat him up, even ripping off his tail just to flex. At that point, Tenshinhan is beaten and falls to the ground in his base form. Future Trunks knows that he is weaker than Tenshinhan and knows the problems with Grade 3 due to Tenshinhan actually training with him, unlike Vegeta, so he's just gonna submit right there. He knows he can't really do anything at this point. Cell sees this and decides to announce the Cell Games, inviting everyone to fight him again there. He then leaves, and the group contemplates what to do. They have 10 days to train, so I think we would see Goku and Gohan use the Time Chamber. Next is Vegeta and Trunks, since Trunks wanted to actually be able to fight this time, so he needs to get stronger. Piccolo goes in after with Tenshinhan and Yu Shang, since Piccolo wouldn't take up any food and would only use up water, so they'd still have most of the 24 hours to train. Goku and Gohan became much stronger than they were in canon after their trip into the Time Chamber, and the same goes for most everyone. Except for Vegeta, since he was already weaker to begin with, since he started out in the story way weaker because he was just brought back a few years prior. Tenshinhan also unlocks Grade 4 like Goku and Gohan, but Yu Shang doesn't quite do so. She's got Grades 2 and 3 though. So now our group goes to the Cell Games and Mr. Satan gets one-shotted still. After that, Goku steps in and honestly this is kind of boring, but he beats Cell. It makes sense since he's much stronger than he was in canon. After this, Cell makes some Cell Juniors, but the Z Fighters are able to handle them pretty well for the most part. So no matter what, Goku is just gonna kill Cell, possibly in a beam clash. And like I said, I know that sounds really boring, but I mean, it just makes sense. Goku's stronger, all the Z Fighters are stronger, so Cell and the Cell Juniors aren't really going to be any trouble. And so, Trunks goes back to his timeline, Goku travels to Namek and recruits Dende as Earth's new guardian, and everyone ends up happy. Well, except for Vegeta. After the events with Cell, he decided to move into Capsule Corp fully, and even got a gravity chamber installed by Bulma. Tenshinhan went back home to train with Chaozu, as well as take care of his 3 daughters. Goku's son, Goten, was born the same time he was originally. Now with Tenshinhan's family of 6, including Chaozu, he's gonna need some more income. I really like the idea from DBZ Kakarot of him having a farm, so we're gonna go with that. And since Goku is alive, Chi-Chi would put him to work as well, like she did in Super. Heck, maybe Tenshinhan and Goku even have rival farms, or Goku works for him. Either way, I just really like that concept. So now we're gonna be jumping 7 years after Cell and into the Buu Saga. Goku has spent his time training, as he usually does, as well as giving his son Goten some training as well. Vegeta does the same as he did in canon, spending his time in the gravity chamber. Tenshinhan and Chaozu continue their own training, and are also occasionally joined by Tenshinhan's kids. Yu Shang is now in high school, using her free time to get stronger. She has taken a liking towards Sharpener, one of Gohan's classmates, and the two end up becoming a couple. As for Tenshinhan's twin daughters, let me tell you a bit about them. They're both older than Trunks by somewhere around 2 years. The younger one, Brunch, has launched his split personality, switching from blue to yellow hair. She also doesn't really enjoy training as much as gaining knowledge. The older one, named Chow Mein, has multicolored hair. She mainly has black hair with some blue streaks. She enjoys training just as much as her father. Also, neither of them have tails since they're new generation Saiyans like Goten and Trunks. And lastly, shout out to Super Savage 789 for giving me the idea to use pictures from other shows in order to make characters in this, because a lot of the time it's hard to get custom art, and also I'm kind of getting tired of having to edit the same characters from Dragon Ball. So yeah, as you can see, we're using some characters from another show. But anyway, the kids would be trained, with Chow Mein doing much more than her younger sister Brunch. The tournament comes about, and Goten and Trunks meet Chow Mein and Brunch. The four all get along pretty well, which is, just awesome. They all enter the junior division, with each of them making it to the semi-finals. Brunch is beaten by Trunks, but she does go blonde afterward, being quite angry about this. Goten was defeated by Chow Mein, though it was a very tough battle. After Goten is wrung out, he manages to calm Brunch down, and the two go off to collect bugs or something like that. At the same time, Trunks and Chow Mein face off in the final match, with both of them matching each other blow for blow. But at the end, Chow Mein uses her full power and goes Super Saiyan 2, since she learned that from her father. She then beats Trunks, who hasn't unlocked that form yet, and bows afterward to show some respect. Trunks is kind of upset about this, but is only inspired to gain even more strength to reach her level. After that, the real tournament begins without Mighty Mask though, since Trunks and Chow Mein went off to find Goten and Brunch. Goku and the gang enter the real tournament, which is quickly derailed by Babidi and his men. This leads to Supreme Kai and Kibito taking off with the gang and trying to stop Babidi. Once they arrive at his lair, Kibito is killed by Deborah, and then our gang proceeds to fight Babidi's men. The only difference would be that Gohan is replaced by Yusheng here, and that means that she is going to kill Deborah pretty easily. After that, Babidi takes over Vegeta and turns him into Majin Vegeta. While normally Goku being alive in What Ifs makes Vegeta lose his anger, here he doesn't actually fight anyone for the full 7 years. He realizes how weak he was compared to everyone else and spent all of his time on training. So he never became satisfied, and instead only grew more angry as he deprived himself of the fights he wanted. Not only did he want to beat Goku, but also Tenshinhan, to prove that he never needed him. And so Babidi does end up taking him over and teleporting everyone to the World Tournament. Goku agrees to fight him, and they are teleported once again, but this time to a wasteland. Tenshinhan tells Gohan and Yusheng to go with Shin to stop Babidi, and that he and Goku will handle Vegeta. And well, at this point, they do. While Vegeta is stronger than Goku, he isn't really as strong as his canon counterpart. Once again, he's been around for less time, so he's had less time to get stronger. He missed the entire Namek arc, so this should not be a surprise. Tenshinhan is about even with him in this state, so when Goku begins getting beaten down, Tenshinhan steps in and fights Vegeta off. Oh yeah, by the way, everybody is using Super Saiyan 2. But since Vegeta is already drained from fighting Goku, he is just going to be losing to Tenshinhan. And that's not even to mention his arsenal of various moves, such as the Solar Flare, Multiform, 4 Witches, etc. So Vegeta will eventually be taken down by Tenshinhan. At the same time, Buu had been released due to that fight, so now he proceeds to trample Shin, Gohan, and Yusheng. Though Buu does find a bit of trouble with Yusheng, and decides to turn her into a cookie and eats her once he's won. He then leaves Gohan and Shin on the ground near death and takes Babidi. Majin Buu then arrives to fight our 3 Saiyans, and Tenshinhan realizes that he can't sense his daughter's energy anymore. And so with this, he lashes out in rage, attacking Buu with all the strength he has. While this does prove to do something, it really isn't too much to handle for Majin Buu. And so, seeing no other option, Tenshinhan charges up a Neo Tri-Beam as his final attack. He fires one, nearly killing Buu already. The Majin regenerates, but Tenshinhan simply fires another, and another, until Buu is eventually erased. Tenshinhan then collapses to the ground, extremely low on energy. Goku also kills Babidi following that big attack, and so now they are both done for. And in case anyone doesn't think it's possible for Tenshinhan to kill Buu, I want to remind you that the Neo Tri-Beam was a big enough multiplier to hold down Semi-Perfect Cell. And at that point, Tenshinhan wasn't even that strong, he didn't have any extra forms, it was just base Tenshinhan, and then multiplied by the Neo Tri-Beam, was then able to hold down Cell. So if Tenshinhan is around Majin Vegeta tier, a bit lower, but still around there, that means Buu isn't nearly that much stronger than him as Cell was. As Majin Vegeta was still able to do some damage to Buu, and hold his own a little bit. Plus, that's not to mention, even a simple self-destruct was able to nearly kill Buu. So, a huge multiplier like the Neo Tri-Beam on that already strong power of a Majin Vegeta tier fighter is just going to be more than enough to kill Buu. And it's also a rapid attack, so Buu won't be able to regenerate fast enough. And so, once that is finished, the gang uses the Dragon Balls to bring everyone back, and Vegeta accepts his loss. I mean, what other choice does he have? He trained intensely for 7 years straight, got a massive boost from Babidi, and still got beat. Staying angry won't really fix anything for him. Goku, seeing that he never got to fight Buu, would hope that Buu comes back as someone good next time. After that, some time would pass, and Shin and Kibito would head home to their planet, inviting the gang to come there and train. Most decline, but Goku thinks it could be a good opportunity for Gohan since he didn't really get to defend the Earth at all. It wouldn't be long, just a weekend or something. Gohan agrees and ends up training with the Z-Sword like he did in canon, breaking it and getting his potential unleashed by the Elder Kai. He isn't quite as strong as in canon, but it's close enough. The God of Destruction Beerus has awakened and is now looking for the Super Saiyan God. He and his angel attendant Whis end up on Earth and proceed to beat everybody up. Goku gets the Super Saiyan God ritual done on him and loses to Beerus. He and Vegeta later go on to train with Whis as well. Tenshinhan doesn't though, since he'd rather stay at home with his family. Plus, I doubt he'd ever even know about it. Yu Shang would have moved out to be with Sharpener by this time as well. The two have a child around the same time as Gohan and Videl have Pan. This will be a boy with 3 eyes named Pencil, since Sharpener's name is, well, you know. Frieza is still going to be revived in this timeline because nobody stopped it originally, so I don't see anyone doing it this time either. And so, he goes off to train for 4 months and returns afterward with his army. The Z-Fighters gather and prepare to defend the Earth. We've got the original crew of Roshi, Krillin, Tenshinhan, Gohan, and Piccolo, as well as Jocko now. But we also now have Yu Shang too. Chow Mein wants to prove herself, and Tenshinhan allows it, as long as she only fights the soldiers and not Frieza. So 2 out of the 3 Tenshinhan's daughters are now joining in the fight. Goten also wants to go along too to protect his friends, and Trunks is gonna go because of Goten. Tenshinhan instructs Chaozu to go to his home and keep Launch and Brunch safe in case they fail. And so now our Z-Fighters take on Frieza's army, which will go quite smoothly. With a much bigger group, the weaker men are going to be taken out quickly, leading to Tagoma and Shisami joining in. But since Gohan is weaker here, he's not going to be the main one fighting. Instead, it will be Yu Shang and Tenshinhan. The father and daughter combo easily body slam both of Frieza's top men and finish them off quickly. Since there's no Ginyu here, that whole thing doesn't happen. So now Tenshinhan is going to try and fight Frieza next. Unfortunately, this isn't going to go very well for him, as even Super Saiyan 2 isn't enough for Frieza's first form. He doesn't even have to step out of his pod to beat Tenshinhan. Upon seeing her father being brutally crushed, Yu Shang becomes enraged and starts flying toward Frieza. He blasts her down and she falls, but she gets back up and flies in again. This time when she gets blasted, she fires back, but not from her hands. Instead, her third eye fires a beam that catches Frieza off guard and hurts him slightly. Everyone is shocked, as no one had ever seen anyone in Tenshinhan's family use their third eye to fire beams before. But we've seen eye beams in Dragon Ball, so it's not a crazy concept. While his daughter is attacking Frieza, Tenshinhan takes out a bottle and begins using the Mafuba technique. He aims it at Frieza, catching him in the blast and sealing him away. He then falls to the ground, having been beaten down beforehand. Goku and Vegeta later arrive, as they don't have instant transmission here, so they had to travel with Whis and Beerus, which takes quite a while. The situation is told to them, but Vegeta says no. He takes the bottle and opens it, letting Frieza out. At that point, he goes on to fight Frieza himself rather than Goku. He wasn't gonna let an enemy this big be taken out by some random seal. Vegeta forces Frieza into his golden form, and so Vegeta reveals Super Saiyan Blue, but he does end up with the same result as Goku did in canon, so now Goku would step in to fight. Either Goku or Vegeta would kill Frieza here, so take your pick. After this, Tenshinhan wants to train with Whis in order to make sure he can actually contribute more next time. Launch encourages him to go as well, and so he thanks her. He lets Chaozu run the farm while he's gone, and then leaves to learn from Whis. Eventually, the Universe 6 tournament is planned, so Tenshinhan is an obvious pick for the team. He will just replace Majin Buu while the rest of the team remains the same. Tenshinhan will also join Goku and Vegeta in the time chamber, cutting their time down to 2 years instead of 3. This leads to him becoming far stronger, though he's not quite on their level yet. He's more around the Golden Frieza tier when in blue, which is still pretty impressive. The tournament begins with Goku beating Botamo and losing to Frost due to his poison. Tenshinhan is up next, beating Frost with little difficulty. He then goes on to fight Magetta and beats him using Super Saiyan God, rather than just Super Saiyan like Vegeta did. He also doesn't resort to using insults and instead just overpowers him. After that, he faces Kaba. I think Tenshinhan would take interest in the boy, seeing how he is a very powerful Saiyan. He kinda reminds him of how Goku was back in the day, a very young but very strong kid. In fact, Kaba's base form is actually stronger than his own. So he has to use Super Saiyan to beat him. When he finds out that Kaba can't transform, he does his best to make that a reality, though he mainly just helps him by training his mind without threatening his family like Vegeta did. And so Kaba eventually does go Super Saiyan, so Tenshinhan uses Super Saiyan God to wring him out. telling him to master the regular form and he'll be able to achieve even higher heights. And so now, Hit is the final opponent, but Hit is not going to be an easy foe for the three-eyed warrior. In fact, Tenshinhan will need his blue form right off the bat. While Hit is much stronger than him, he is somewhat able to hold his own by using his techniques. The Solar Flare, Four Witches, and Multiform all give him the small hope he needs to fight back. When he's about to lose, he attempts to use a Neo Tri-Beam, but Hit just taps him out of the ring using his time skip. Piccolo is up next, but he realistically isn't going to do anything special here. Thankfully though, him fighting allows for Vegeta to have 2 fights to watch to observe Hit's movements and technique. So now when Vegeta steps in, he's going to hold his own quite nicely. But in the end, he just doesn't have the power to take Hit down. He does force him to improve his time skip though. Since Goku has already seen Hit fight 3 times now, he can skip the warm-up and fight him straight away in blue. But due to Hit having already improved, it is quite difficult for him to win this, especially since he doesn't have the Kaioken here as well. So Hit does end up ringing out Goku, and that leads to him fighting Manaka. But he does have enough respect for all of our warriors here to fake his loss against Manaka to show that they are not pawns in the god's game. So after that, Beerus wishes for Champa's Earth to be restored, and the gang go back to their normal lives. Tenshinhan also returns to Beerus' planet to train with Whis some more. He needs to fully catch up to Goku and Vegeta in order to be content with himself. Whis also introduces the concept of Ultra Instinct to him the same way that he did with Goku and Vegeta, so not outright stating that there is an Ultra Instinct, but he kind of just mentions it and hints toward it. That way he knows what he's striving for, so that way he can surpass his 2 Saiyans comrades. During the Goku Black arc, I'd say Tenshinhan sits this out. He might make some appearances here and there, but he'd probably return to his family and be with them for a while. So the Black arc goes the exact same. It may seem a little lazy, but I mean, we've already got a ton of stuff to cover for this part, and also, I kind of want Tenshinhan to be training and just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, rather than being involved here. Plus, it wouldn't really make sense for him to be involved here. He's kind of disconnected from everybody else. But after that, the Tournament of Power is brought up, with the exhibition match seeing Piccolo replace Majin Buu. They still win though, so it's all good. Universe 7's team must now be picked. The roster will be Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, Tenshinhan, Yusheng, Krillin, Android 17, Android 18, and Roshi. So no issue with the final member and stuff, because that would just be filled with Yusheng, so they would never have to go get Frieza. Speaking of Yusheng, she spends her time prepping with her father, and the 2 spar and gain even more strength together. So instead of having Goku and Tenshinhan versus Piccolo and Gohan, we would have Goku and Gohan versus Tenshinhan and Yusheng. So a very interesting Saiyan, half Saiyan, father-child kind of battle, which is pretty interesting. I would honestly say that this fight would be super close. Yusheng has been keeping up her training her whole life, so even though she's only got Super Saiyan 2, she's still on that same level as Ultimate Gohan. And Tenshinhan and Goku are just about equal as well. And so, we would see both fights being similar to Goku and Frieza in that they are evenly matched. Heck, Tenshinhan and Yusheng probably have better teamwork than Goku and Gohan do, so they might even win. If I had to pick a winner, I would say that the father and daughter would win. Anyway, the tournament finally comes around and everyone is prepared. They enter the stage and the tournament begins. Tenshinhan and Yusheng would be part of the Universe 7 circle. When they get attacked by Shosa, Comfrey, Dokuri, Lavender, and Botamo, Tenshinhan and Yusheng are not going to hold back. They both use their full power and proceed to take out the weaker ones. Gohan follows their lead and overpowers Botamo out of the ring like he did in canon, just sooner this time. Since some of them were from Universe 9, Goku and Vegeta are able to eliminate that universe much quicker without any hassle. Yusheng takes the place of Frieza and eliminates all the guys he did in canon, just without toying with them. She'd do it much quicker. Vegeta tries to fight Hit again, but is stopped by only Vegeta this time since Botamo is already gone. This allows him to take Vegeta out of the ring now instead of later, but by that point Hit has already left. Tenshinhan is going to be able to take out all the guys he struggled with in canon as well. Since Yusheng isn't going to be making deals and wasting time torturing people like Frieza did, she is able to help out more in some of these fights. Like when Roshi has to fight all of Universe 4, she's going to step in to help him out where she can. Yusheng will also save him from Frost instead of Vegeta, so Frost gets eliminated and Roshi gets to stay. Tenshinhan takes on your guys' favorite character, Ribrianne, and beats her, taking her out of the ring as well. So by the time of Goku's fight with Jiren, the team has only lost Krillin. Anyway, speaking of, that Jiren fight goes the same, but Goku simply uses a Kamehameha instead of a Spirit Bomb. which means we would still see Ultra Instinct Omen being unveiled here and then being beaten by Jiren. Hit gets eliminated after that, and Roshi gives his energy to Goku before hopping out of the ring, since he really can't do too much else. He kind of fought all the weaker opponents, and even then he even had some help there. Yu Sheng is going to go on to fight Dispo, with her forcing him into his super maximum light speed mode. With her in Super Saiyan 2, this makes them both equal, so Toppo steps in to help his comrade. At this point, Yu Sheng is beaten up by the two, and this makes her pretty angry. She knows she can beat Dispo to give her father an easier time and save her universe, and her family back home. But they're not letting her fight him on his own. So she gets furious and sneezes. Since she's already in Super Saiyan 2, her hair doesn't change color, but what does happen is that a blue ki pours out of her body. She yells out, now in the Super Saiyan Rage form that we saw Trunks use in the Goku Black arc. This power shocks Toppo, so she catches him off guard with a kick to the gut. She then charges at Dispo, easily beating him out of the ring and taking him down. Toppo steps in to fight her, but she ends up by losing her new form after a close fight. So Tenshinhan is forced to save his daughter and proceeds to fight Toppo himself. Of course he is going to be losing this fight, but he's going to do his absolute best to save his family. He is able to hold his own in Super Saiyan Blue, but Toppo starts ramping up the heat. Tenshinhan begins losing badly, and so he uses a Tri-Beam, but Toppo fires his own blast to overtake his. The blast completely surrounds the three-eyed warrior and he falls to the ground. But then, he gets back up, seemingly in his base form. The ground around him begins to shake, and rubble lifts off as he makes his way toward Toppo. He had awakened the same power as Goku, Ultra Instinct Omen. With this, he begins saucing on Toppo to the extreme, and just gives him a nice beatdown. But Toppo eventually sees how bad he's losing, and uses his God of Destruction form to free himself. Now real quick, I see a lot of people say that without Vegeta and Frieza there, trying to mess with Toppo's pride and taking pot shots at him, that he wouldn't use this form, but in the end, if his universe is threatened and he can't output any more strength, he will definitely use the form. He's not going to let his universe be erased. So yeah, I see people saying this in a lot of what ifs, so I figured I'd just cover it here. So Toppo's going to use his God of Destruction form, and this is going to be too much for our hero, as this form was able to handle a blue Vegeta who had already adapted while fighting Jiren. But blue Vegeta had already gotten so strong that he was pushing Jiren with his normal attacks in the final flash, which Omen 1 Goku couldn't even do. So him getting blue evolution and then getting stronger too makes Toppo far outclass Omen 1 Goku. And Tenshinhan is equal to that Goku when using this form, so he's in that same tier. This means that Toppo is going to start overpowering Tenshinhan and making him unable to dodge everything. He was adapting to these attacks as he fought, but Toppo still had a massive advantage over him. So he is eventually taken down by Toppo and nearly eliminated, only being saved by his daughter distracting Toppo. But this gets Yu Sheng hit instead, knocking her out of the ring. Gohan saves Tenshinhan and gets him out of there, giving him enough energy to defend himself. This leads to him, Gohan, and Piccolo fighting off Gamisaurus, Shansa, and Damon and taking them out using strategy, so only Piccolo gets dropped here. Tenshinhan then goes on to aid in the defeat of Universe 3's robot fighters before the birth of Anilaza. Here, Tenshinhan is able to save Android 18 by using the multiform and jumping over to grab her. He has one of them sacrifice themselves to throw her back on stage, and then reforms to gain his full power back. Against Anilaza, Tenshinhan will basically replace Frieza, with 18 having some minor support to 17's final attack. They eventually take the dub, but then out of the blue, 18 is launched off by a purple blast. She is knocked out of the stage, and the gang looks over to see Toppo standing with his hand aimed. He is still using his God form. He says that he won't let any of them get to Jiren, and that they'll have to take him out first. So now all 5 of our fighters try to take a stand against the godly opponent, but cannot hold a candle to him. This eventually forces Vegeta to unlock Blue Evolution and attack him alongside Goku and the others. Gohan gets dropped by Toppo here and taken out of the ring. Toppo is able to beat up Goku and Vegeta because the original Vegeta got much stronger from fighting Jiren, but here that hasn't happened, so Toppo is much more powerful than him. Toppo tries eliminating Goku and Vegeta, but Tenshinhan knows how important they are, and so he charges in to take the attack. In Super Saiyan Blue, he takes it and collapses to the ground, but is able to catch his footing as he reawakens Ultra Instinct Omen. Omen, Tenshinhan, and Blue Evolution Vegeta attack Toppo together, both adapting and getting much stronger as they fight. This eventually culminates in a Final Flash Tri-Beam combo that takes Toppo for good. Vegeta and Tenshinhan are both exhausted from this and fall to the ground. So now 17 and Goku go on to fight Jiren together and don't do all too well. Vegeta recovers much faster than Tenshinhan does, so Tenshinhan tells him to go help the others. He's gonna sit back and regain his composure and jump in when he can. So 17, Goku, and Vegeta all end up having the same battle against Jiren, ending in 17's sacrifice. Vegeta now tries to step in and fight Jiren, but Tenshinhan knows that he's weakened, so he's gonna do it himself. He powers up to Super Saiyan God and tries fighting Jiren, but of course he is just gonna be body slamming him with little difficulty. Vegeta is slowly regaining his strength once again, waiting to help out. Tenshinhan eventually uses Super Saiyan Blue, but this is ineffective due to him being so much weaker than Jiren. Though he does still manage to keep up to some degree due to his skill. When he is just about to be beaten, Vegeta jumps in to try and take over for him. He is able to use Super Saiyan this time, but that's not really so much. The prince is eventually eliminated and gives the last of his energy to Goku, who now fights in his place. Goku ends up bringing Ultra Instinct Omen out once again and mastering it as well. This leads to him beating Jiren down and bringing out his hidden power, eventually resulting in him starting to tap out due to strain. But when that happens, Tenshinhan uses the last of his own energy to fuel Goku, allowing for him to use the form for a brief period and eliminate Jiren along with himself. So now Tenshinhan and 17 are left, with the two agreeing to bring back all the other universes. After that, Tenshinhan is going to go back home with his family and try to complete Ultra Instinct like he saw Goku did. It may take a long time, but he has to strive to be better. The Broly movie happens still, but with Barry Blue in charge instead of Frieza, since Frieza is never resurrected. So Paragus doesn't get killed here. And that means Broly never goes Super Saiyan, and so he gets beaten by Vegeta and Goku over time. Tenshinhan senses what happens, and he arrives to the scene. Upon seeing Broly's backstory, he requests for him to be the first member of his dojo. With Paragus being forced to give up on his vengeance plot, Broly agrees to this, and so now Broly and Tenshinhan go off to train together and reach even higher heights. By the way, if you're wondering why Tenshinhan is just starting his dojo now, it's because this whole time he's been doing way more training with Whis and stuff, and also he's been running the farm. So he hasn't really had time to run a dojo, but now he is. But since I'm not going to cover the Dragon Ball Super manga, that is where the story ends for now. I hope you guys enjoyed how this went, as I know I did. Tenshinhan was a really good character and got wasted and ruined hardcore in the original story, so it was nice giving him a family and a bigger role. But as always, tell me if you liked this series, comment your requests for future videos, and subscribe. Thank you for watching, have a great day.